During the middle of our current crisis and pandemic, there is a continuing argument between two groups of people. The people who believe that the health and well-being of the citizens is the more important thing and that businesses should stay closed as long as it takes to get a grip on this virus and make us a somewhat healthier society, get over the virus so it's not spreading around, and then and only then should we then reopen businesses safely so that our society does not cause more of a risk of people getting sick and then overcrowding the hospitals, so on and so forth. You have a people who believe that it should be handled in the safe manner. You also got another group of people making a strong argument that no. We need to reopen the businesses now. This is causing too much harm to our economy, and jobs are going to suffer. People are going to suffer. People's financial structure is going to really suffer from this, and the economic crisis we're facing, the amount of job loss we could be facing, far outweighs handling this safely in regards to people's health. Now, I know the way that I kind of explained that made it sound like those people are basically saying, screw your health, money's more important. There is something to what they're saying about what this is going to have effect-wise on jobs, things of that nature. It's already had effect on a lot of these jobs. Some mom and pop shops have said very blatantly, we're probably not going to be able to reopen, which means their business is done. Okay? The crushing of the American dream, building up a business, to have your own, form of income and be someone, even if it's not at the top of the financial ladder. You've got a comfortable, living for your family. You've started your own business. It's kind of like the old, adage of the American dream, right? Being able to do things like that. And then this thing comes along and wipes it all out. Okay? So, that there is something to be said there. Before I get to the rest of this, I want to read a post that someone shared on Facebook. That's a friend of mine. They're actually distant relative of my own family, so I won't be naming any names, but I know they do not watch this channel, so I will be reading this post just real quick, and you can get an idea of what the argument some people are making is. Alright, post goes on to read, "Wake up, America. We need to get people back to work and open this country back up. Oil prices are negative $1.50. Do any of y'all know how this affects so many jobs and families? Do any of y'all know what it means when oil is down? The economy needs to open. America, wake up. The effects of this shutdown will cause even more deaths of so many people and things, and they don't even have to get the virus to be affected tremendously. Come on, people. Demand your states to open up. Demand your country to open up. Our lives depend on it literally. This is not a joke. This is not something to take lightly. We cannot prevail without opening the economy. Everyone needs it to live." Now, this argument, I'm just going to be blatantly honest, to me is taking it a little too far. That particular argument that was made there. Okay? Yes, we need to try to preserve our economy, for sure. But I'm not saying we should put everyone's lives at risk either. There's one group of people to blame for the current situation. That's your government. They are the reason that you have a conundrum on your hands. A problem. Not just you, we, because I'm included in it too. Okay? They're the problem. And why? Because for years, they have prioritized throwing the economy in your face while screwing you over on things like healthcare, so that when something like this happened, we were too ill prepared to handle it. meaning when it happened, they were too busy kicking that can down the road so that the people who fund their campaigns made a profit off of healthcare. Okay? They were too busy allowing things like that to happen so that when the pandemic hit, you were screwed because our medical system was not prepared to cover it. And so you had a choice. Hurt the economy and shut down businesses, which could cause massive job loss, massive unemployment, and serious problems all throughout the country. It's either take that road or take the other road, which results in a serious gamble of a lot of people catching it, just letting Mother Nature take its course, and even under good circumstances would stress a well-prepared healthcare system, but one that wasn't prepared would be a flipping nightmare. That's what would have happened had that course of action been taken, and they know it. Do you really believe that they would just allow the economy to go down the damn toilet if they didn't know the alternative would cause a serious health crisis and crash our hospital system? We would be so overloaded we couldn't handle the situation in front of us? Of course they knew that would happen. That's the reason they're not letting that happen. Because which one is going to give the bigger black eye? An economic crisis in the middle of a pandemic, or you wind up looking like your country is a complete freaking joke when it comes to healthcare and, emergency medical care for citizens because you can't keep up with all of your citizens. You have more people than you have supplies to take care of them medically. And this is supposed to be the land of the free, home of the brave, greatest country in the world, yet we would fail miserably if that were to happen. See, all the big minds knew that. That's why they didn't let that happen. When you think about it, it's not that hard to figure out. So again, you've also got people, when you talk about proposed solutions to help people getting affected through this crisis, who will tell you that any kind of a UBI, we can't pay for it. I'm still hearing that, by the way. Can't pay for it. Can't pay for it. They'll tell you that the Medicare for all or any form of single payer, something that could give people that can't afford private insurance coverage that they would be able to afford. And I'm not talking public option. Okay? They're going to tell you that we can't afford that either. No. Just we can't afford it. Yet again, most other developed countries throughout the world pay less than we do for healthcare. Pay twice as much per capita. Bernie was great about pointing that out. Okay? We pay twice as much per capita as anyone else in the world. And they're telling us we can't pay for it. That costs too much. We can't cough up a little over $30 trillion over a 10-year period. Can't be done. Yet again, let's turn back around to the argument that they're trying to make, that you can't pay for it. Okay, I'll turn back to my counter argument. How can the Federal Reserve give out $1 trillion loans a day to big banks? Now, that was announced back in March. I don't think they're still actively doing that, but they were going to do it, if I'm not mistaken, till the end of March or something like that. Even if that wasn't a full month, even if it was just 15 days, they were going to get the loan, whatever. That's $15 trillion if one bank took it. Now, from what I have gathered, I don't think banks took a full $1 trillion a day, but they certainly took a lot of money. But that doesn't matter how much they actually took. What matters is what was on the table to be taken. Think about that. We're not talking about how much they actually got. If you put $15 trillion on the table for one bank, of course, two banks, that would be $30 trillion. Three banks, that'd be $45 trillion. How about four? 60. 5, 75. Now, I don't recall hearing a number to how many banks this could apply to. Big banks. Well, that's awful loose, isn't it? What are we considering a big bank? Goldman Sachs? Or Goldman Sachs? Goldman Sachs? JP Morgan Chase? That's two, okay? Who else could be considered a big bank? I mean, maybe there was something out there that described it, but I haven't seen it. If anyone knows of it, I mean, certainly send it my way. I'd love to check it out. But nonetheless, just stop at 4. Just stop at 4. You're already at 4 banks, $60 trillion that can be loaned out. Now, if you can cough up $60 trillion, even if it's going to be repaid to you, you still got to get that money from somewhere. How are you doing that so quickly? Well, the first thing a lot of people tried to say was, oh, it's because they're causing inflation. They're just printing the money out, and therefore it's going to cause massive inflation into the economy. They're going to collapse the dollar and blah, 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 blah. See, you didn't think of that one. Now, look, I'm not a brain trust when it comes to, currency. But I do know a thing or two, okay? I know a thing or two. Now, I know that generally speaking, under traditional, information, common sense that most people can have about it, it makes sense. If you print money, it becomes devalued. It happened with the Soviet Union, okay? It's also a general fact. The less of something you have, the more valuable it's worth. The more of it there is, the less valuable it is because there's plenty of it to grab, okay? So that is kind of a general rule of thumb. So I'm not going to say there might not be anything to that. Okay? However, my question is, you keep hearing them talk over at the Federal Reserve about this modern monetary policy. Now, I'm not exactly a huge, proficionado on what this modern monetary policy is, but here's my question. If it's not the magic trick they say it is, and it is causing inflation, well, why have we not seen that massive inflation hit prices already? Now, don't tell me you've seen prices raise. You're in a pandemic. That's going to happen. People are buying up stuff hand over fist. So, of course, when it's flying off the shelves and they can't already keep it in stock, some stores are going to do that. Some will even price gouge. They will charge a massive amount for hand sanitizer because they know you want it because of your circumstances. So they're going to charge you a little more to make a little more profit. That's the greed of corporations. So you can't equivalate to any sort of a small price climb you've seen or even price gouging to that being the result of inflation. It's not. It's the result of a pandemic that's currently taking place. So if there is this massive inflation because they're just printing out all those trillions of dollars, which, by the way, even again on 2 banks taking $1 trillion a day for 15 days, that's $30 trillion. That's more than our entire national debt right now. Period. It's more than our entire national debt right now. And they could give that to big banks. People printing our money could come up with it. And again, if it's causing inflation, why are we not seeing that sort of massive inflation? Because I could tell you this, common sense tells me, unless some economic expert can just take me to task and prove me wrong, if they're just printing out that much money at one time, then our dollar should be basically worthless right now. Yet, that doesn't seem to be happening. Which again raises the question, can we really apply the old school way of thinking about money to what we're looking at right now? Again, maybe someone's a little bit smarter on this subject than I am. But it certainly raises a question in my mind. Nonetheless, regardless of what the outcome on that is, okay, this is just questions and speculation right there. What isn't going to be questions and speculation is the fact that if they could cough it up, inflation or not, to loan to banks, Why can't they set aside a small $3 trillion? Matter of fact, make it 4 to 5. Again, I've said this before. Let me take the high road and say that Medicare for all would cost even more than the original projected cost of about $30 trillion. Let's say it costs $50 trillion over a 10-year period. You're telling me you can't set aside $5 trillion a year for 10 years to cover a healthcare program, yet you can, to put it so elegantly, shit nearly $15 trillion out of your ass within half a month for a big bank. And to all my people and followers or whoever else out there says, we can't pay for it, explain that. And I'm listening. Point being is, as I referenced at the beginning of this video, there is one person to blame for why your economy's tanking. Well, not one person, but one group of people. The federal government. Matter of fact, you could throw another group in there. The federal government and the rich assholes have been lobbying them off to do the wrong thing by the people for so long. Wrong for the people, right for us, the donors, though, because, hey, we got all the money and we're going to buy you off. Our interest is the only one that matters. That's their way of thinking. And the politicians have been the evil bastards that a lot of people have thought they were for a long time, and they took that bribe money and did the wrong things. And they're doing it now. They're going to continue to do it as long as people continue to just follow like good little, obedient folks and vote for those same corrupt candidates. Joe Biden. Remember, he'd veto Medicare for all if it passed the House and Senate. So again, this is the perfect argument for why we needed massive healthcare reform so that we had a system in this country where, one, everyone could be covered, okay, and two, we were able to keep up with what we've got right now, should something like this happen, so that we might not have to have the effect on our economy this has had. We would have still had a bad effect on the economy either way. But if people had to go to the hospital, maybe they could have kept up with it if they had been properly taken care of all these years. And if people were able to go and get health insurance. Now, again, think about that. Think about that. Even in the middle of this pandemic, where we need insurance, you've got people like Joe Biden who, by the way, don't want to give you Medicare for all, don't want to give you single payer, don't want to make sure you're covered. But they're going to get out there and tell you that if you get this, testing should be free, treatment should be free for COVID-19. If you're a cancer patient, pound sand, son, you're not getting the damn thing. You know why? You know why? Because some lobbyist from the health insurance companies, they want your business. They want to charge you an arm and a damn leg. And you know what? It ain't me. It ain't my problem. That's your problem. So I'm going to let them do it. That's their mentality. That's the government's mentality through all this. Cancer patient, I don't care if you can't afford your treatments. I can't afford if you can't. I don't care if you can't afford your testing. Not my problem, man. All these other illnesses, no. We won't apply that to those. Just the talk of the hour because it is a worldwide pandemic and there's such a problem. But again, not to downplay what's going on with this virus, but how many people get cancer? How many people get other serious illnesses they need treatment for? Some might say that, cancer is a pandemic. The only difference is it's not a virus and can't be transmitted people to people the way that COVID-19 is. So, again, if you're going to cover this, why is it a problem to treat other people? who might not be able to afford what they need to potentially live. That's absolutely ridiculous. And here's the ironic part. I would be willing to bet you that half the people who are going to sit here and rail against single payer, talk about, oh, they got waiting lines in other countries and you got to get on a list to get treatment and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I could get on a list somewhere else to get treatment later, or I could just not, get good treatment here because I'm not going to go because I can't afford it. Or I could go and get it and then lose every damn thing I own and be a financial wreck, probably be homeless, and be so far in debt I can never climb out. Here. That's kind of that old adage of, I can live to be miserable, or I could just be miserable and die. Pretty much is the way to look at it. It's like one of those scenarios where you see people like that were in a tragic car accident, basically, that lost their limbs, can't move, and can't live the life they used to live, but they're alive. Now, some might look at that and say, well, you know what? I'm alive, and that's what matters. Other people might look at that and say, God, I wish I had just died. Because what kind of life am I living now? Well, how do you think that's going to feel to someone who simply caught an illness like cancer or anything else, and then because they needed treatment and couldn't pay for it, lost every damn thing they owned? How do you think that's going to treat them if they're living in a cardboard box because of a medical problem that they couldn't help and needed treatment for so that they could stay alive? Only to stay alive and then potentially be bankrupt and miserable for the rest of their life. I can't say that if that happened to me, I wouldn't wish that I had just died. I really can't. Who wants to live that kind of a life? No one. I'm not going to say no one, but not very many people I think would choose that. Certainly. So this is no different than all those other problems, other than the fact that it has become a worldwide pandemic virus that's spreading around very rapidly. The outcome could be the same. And you've got all these figures like Nancy Pelosi pushing that COBRA. We should fund COBRA. Not give you health insurance, but fund COBRA. Fund the private companies. That's the answer. Now let that sink in for all you people that say we can't pay for it. They're going to pay for it, but not just directly to you so you could be covered. No, let's fund a private company. Now let that sink in. The private companies pay to get them elected, pay to get them to rail against single payer and Medicare for all or anything like that. Pay them to rail against a single payer healthcare system because that would hurt their profits. And then in the middle of a pandemic where the world and a lot of people who didn't want single payer before are now advocating for measures of a single payer system because of this pandemic, and the government comes back and says, well, we got a better plan. Our friends who paid to get us elected, see, they can take care of you. And so rather than we just taking care of you, we will pay them so that they can take care of you. That way, they're getting their money and they're covered. Isn't that a great idea? Look at me. I'm not old as dirt for no reason. I've got some experience. My name is Nancy Pelosi, and I'm a hell of a leader. That's what you got. That's what you got. That's your government. So the next time you want to complain about how bad the economy is, the next time you want to complain about the fact that we can't reopen the economy without crashing our medical center in this country, our medical system, because they can't keep up, you got one main group you can blame for every bit of that. That's your federal government. So remember that when you go out and vote for any red that will do or any blue that will do, and you just keep voting for the damn problem over and over and over and over again. And I'd also encourage you to remember that the next time you want to lecture me about how not voting for some of these corrupt assholes is a vote for the other corrupt asshole you don't want to win. I'm going to vote for someone who actually stands for something and is not advocating for these same policies. And if I don't have anyone on that ballot that represents that, I simply won't vote. My vote has to be earned. It's not expected, and it will not be given out because a group of unhappy people don't like the fact their corporate asshole, in their opinion, is a little bit better than the corporate asshole on the other side that they want to lose. That won't win my vote. And if you don't like it, I don't really give a shit. I don't really give a shit. I'm not going to go along to get along. My vote will be earned or it will not be given. And with that being said, this is one of the biggest cases when you look at everything going on right now and why we can't reopen our economy because of our medical problems in this country, because of our healthcare problems in this country, for why we need a single payer system and massive reform to the current system. Big time.